funny when your husband introduced himself. I was thinking, oh, somebody else with the same last name. I made the connection eventually. So you might wonder, why is Ashley particularly qualified to talk about this topic? The reason is because she's currently working to build up Parlor Shows, which is the Airbnb for house shows for artists, musicians, really mostly. You can probably talk more about this. So the fascinating thing about the sharing economy, there's a lot. There are a lot of angles, and so she's in the middle of it in one area, and we will talk about all those revolutions that are happening. I have to say, I'm really excited about this. The sharing economy really is having a major impact, and with winners and losers, which makes it a big topic. It's not just like there's a new product coming out and some people using something. It really is disrupting, and many of you know that I used to bring a bunch of my colleagues up to Truckee in the winter to go skiing, and we've actually done something different. We'll do something different this year. We booked through Airbnb a house in Portugal for 5 weeks, and so that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to unfortunately miss an event here, but I'm still already looking forward to it. So this is Airbnb. When I went on a trip this summer to Vancouver and Seattle with my wife, we routinely looked up hotels, didn't find anything we liked. Why don't we check out Airbnb? So we did Airbnb. It was so much better. We had such a fantastic time because these were really the most wonderful hosts who gave us like tickets to this and that, where they had an extra one, and made us feel at home. When I visited my son in Boston recently, I did multiple Uber trips, and I love the fact that I know exactly where the car is. It never took more than a couple of minutes for the car to come. Those people were super friendly, and I think they were because they knew they would be getting feedback. And so it really is, like, from a consumer perspective, fantastic. But then I was thinking, what if I was the owner of a taxi company, or maybe of a limousine or a transportation company? So what does it mean?
Hasn't affected us too much.
So you're probably a little bit, you're not like as affected certainly as others are, but if I was the owner of the local taxi company, I might think very differently about the situation. So it is fascinating. So that's, without further ado, why I'm looking forward to this talk. Thank you.
So hi, thanks for having me, guys. My name is Ashley Jennings.
Oh, and I started from the end.
Okay.
Somebody else you do. So she's a graduate from Columbia University, did work in the social field, and that one thing I need to mention is the CEO founder of Girlmade, which is a startup accelerator focusing on female-led startups. I thought I was so clever by starting to explain why she's here, and then I totally forgot to do the rest of it. But here we go. Okay.
Thank you. No worries. So thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about this. I'm super passionate about the subject. The reason being that I actually started out as my husband and I would travel, and we would actually use Airbnb as a guest, and had such a tremendous experience. Like you said, the consumer experience within the sharing economy verticals, whether it's Uber or Airbnb, they are so excellent because they get immediate feedback, and they don't want to lose you as a client. And that feedback loop's really important, and it's very quick. So I had such a great experience as a guest, and even in some of them, they weren't great experiences, but I could see the potential. So if we didn't have a great host, we would be like, oh, well, there's got to be a better host, but maybe a same location or same sort of experience. And so anyway, so I fell in love with the experience, and that led me to actually convince my introverted husband to put our house, one of our guest rooms, on Airbnb. We are actually taking a break right now, so you can't find us on Airbnb, even if you wanted to. But we've been taking a break for like the last 3 months. So we've done that for the last 3.5, 4 years. And we've made a significant amount of money. I didn't think it would be significant, and I wasn't counting on it, thankfully, so I didn't really, I wasn't wrestling with the numbers too hard. But after, every time we would go to do our tax return, I would give them my I guess it's not a W-2. Was it a W-2? 1099. I would have to turn in my 1099 to our accountant, and I would see how much we made. And it was actually quite impressive. And it allowed for us to fix things like the plumbing or different upgrades that we wanted in our old 1939 brick Tudor that had all sorts of problems. So I clearly see the benefit of the sharing economy, and that actually led me to what I'm doing now. So while I was doing Airbnb in my house, I had a couple of requests for musicians who wanted to do house shows, perform in a house, and they weren't actually locals. They were people traveling from out of state. And they said, would you be interested in doing a backyard house show? And I was like, maybe, and I was a little bit nervous. I mean, Airbnb I understand, and I haven't had too many bad experiences, and I see that there's some checks and balances in the system, and they have insurance and things like that. But I was like, house show music, that sounds really, really stressful, right? So it turned out to be super easy and laid back, and it didn't take hardly any work at all on our part. But it actually made me start thinking if Airbnb, as you've seen, has just, that model is exploding. There's in every niche and every vertical, you see 5 more companies coming out each week. So I thought, of course, I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, if I can do Airbnb in my house, I could probably do it, use the same model for musicians and get them house concerts around the world, right? So I could increase the number of venues that they have available to them. People who love music will love to host these people. So I was like, it's a win-win, right? So then I started, of course, digging more into the sharing economy. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what I learned about what I learned in the sharing economy. There are a couple of question marks that people still have, right? So there's a lot of stuff around regulation, any regulatory codes that are starting to emerge. Obviously, the government is usually about 10 years behind, so they have to think about these things while they're changing every day, right? So we have a lot to think about there. I'm not generally a fan of regulation, but I think that we can think about, if we can think about it in more of a win-win sense and not so much like a cracking down on these Uber drivers who are not, licensed and the ADA doesn't really approve of their, all those things. If we can just kind of look at it from more of a, this is helping the economy in a general sense, how do we just make it safer, make it so the states are winning, in certain ways. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do at the end of this presentation, I'm going to kind of fly through a presentation and give you sort of an overview for those of you who aren't familiar with the different models that we have out there. But then I'm actually going to crowdsource your guys' brain power and see if by the end we can come up with some answers to some of the questions that our agencies, regulatory agencies, are dealing with right now. See if you guys can think through these a little bit and figure out some of the risks and rewards and how we can kind of improve upon these models. So get your thinking caps ready, okay? Because in about 20 minutes we're going to go into that stage of the talk. So I am not a big fan of talking at people because I think what I've learned is just from reading on the internet, and you guys could do the very same thing. So I like to really just engage you guys in my audiences in such a way that you're thinking about this and you're finding it meaningful to something, like connecting it to something in your life, whether it's making the decision to maybe try out one of these services or just educating yourself more. But I'd like to connect with you guys a little bit. So if you guys ever have a question during the talk, just feel free to raise your hand and I'll get to you after I finish my thought. And then the last thing I want to say before I start is just I've been in the startup scene, mostly I started in social work, and I mostly got into it because I saw my husband had a web development company, and I started doing sales for him, and I started working with customers, and I realized that I could choose the companies I wanted to work with based on their values and what they brought to the world, and I could also make a lot more money than I was in social work. So I just want to encourage you guys that if you have ideas or you feel like, I've been in this career my whole entire life, I can't switch over now, it's never too late to switch over, and there's always a place. Startups are really, really the most fluid places, so they're very open to, you coming in and saying, I have these talents and these skills, I might be able to help you here. Can I intern for you, or can I join? in some position, right? So I would encourage you to find startups that you're excited about. I think it really rejuvenates you, and even if you're 40, 50, 60, you have so much to give. I especially am a big fan of bringing in people with a lot of wisdom into startups that have really young bucks running them. So, okay, so here we go. So the sharing economy, Uber, Airbnb, and how sharing resources spreads the wealth. So the term collaborative economy, there's many other terms for it, but sharing economy is one. It refers to the growing practice of consumers serving each other directly rather than being served by companies, and paying for the use of goods rather than owning them.
Actually, it's not advanced on your offer.
Is it advancing? Yeah. Okay. So these are some great examples, and this is all, just so you know, this isn't new stuff. Like Uber's been around quite a few years now. It's just now we're just seeing it bubble up to a mass, it's getting mass adoption now. But so are you guys familiar with Etsy? Yeah, so Etsy is 10 years old now, and they just had an IPO recently. They have 19 million active shoppers, and they don't own a single factory, warehouse, or showroom. 8-year-old Lending Club, are you guys familiar with Lending Club? So Lending Club gets you basically, well, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we'll just say they are doing awesome, and they've done over $7 billion in peer-to-peer loans. They don't own a single bank, branch, or ATM, and they're valued at $7 billion. 7-year-old Airbnb has over 23 million guests, doesn't own a single bed, bath, or bar, and is valued at $20 billion. 6-year-old Uber had 140 million rides. Like, think about that. It's just massive. In 2014, and they don't own a single taxi, cab, or town car, and they're valued at $40 billion. In the next 10 years, it's predicted that the collaborative economy will grow from $15 billion in revenue to $335 billion in revenue. So these are huge numbers, and hopefully I can deconstruct for you a little bit of why they're winning so big. So how did we get here? I talked a little bit about how the collaborative economy is really moving from institutional trust, like going to Bank of America or Wells Fargo and getting yourself an SBA or a personal loan to pay off all of your high credit card debt. And now we're moving from that to peer-to-peer trust. So trusting more in peers and their reputations that precede them on the internet. So how did we get here, right? This didn't just like happen overnight. So there's a couple different stages. You guys remember when you were like doing your dial-up and it was like going bling, 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 bling. So we started, with just pure communication, right? You were able to get on the internet. You could read your email. You could read news groups. There were bulletin boards, right? And you could meet a few people. And then that kind of went into Web 2.0. Some of this isn't really Web 2.0, but it was the best flowchart I could find. Okay, so, but Web 2.0 was more about self-publishing, right? So that's where you saw, RSS feeds and blogs, and people were starting to create their own content and even make money off of that content, right? And then the social revolution kicked in, right, with Facebook. And so you're now following your friends and following other people that you respect, people, knowledge workers that you wanted to follow and wanted to learn from. And you're starting to see all this accumulative, like, social sort of street cred, right? Because these people went from, publishing to now you have Facebook, and you can see kind of all of their history over the years. And that's been huge for sort of creating this framework below the sharing economy. So the third phase is mobile. So a few years back, it became really easy to now work from your laptop or work from your iPad, work on the beach. You didn't have to be in one location with servers running and all this jazz. So mobile made a huge dent in what now is the sharing economy, and helped us to revolutionize how we interact in that way. So as you can see, like, we're actually living on what is like many iterations of the internet, right? That really, if we didn't have all of these earlier iterations, there's no way we could do what we're doing right now. And people just wouldn't trust other people on the internet as much as they do, right? It's kind of weird to think that 10 years ago, nobody trusted any, we had no trust, peer-to-peer trust built on the internet. And now we're, giving out loans to people we don't know, right? So who's driving this movement forward? Everybody talks about the millennials. In some ways, I think they're overrated. In some ways, I think they've kind of nailed it. So they're a group that has been coined as confident, connected, and open to change. They were born in 79 to 99 range. I'm actually at the very tail end. I was born in 82, so I'm still considered a millennial. So what I really like about the way that they live, and we have a 15-year-old who lives this way, and it's constantly inspiring us in many ways, is that their American dream is to experience more and have less. And we're seeing these trends all over. It's really a lot of, this is a horrible thing to say, but basically like the rich are starting to get fewer items, higher end items, and them along with the millennials are kind of shaping how we consume. And the poorer groups are starting to be the ones that are collecting things in storage and hoarding things in their houses. So we're really seeing a shift in the consumer trends, right? So what is this sharing economy built on? So I would say the easiest way to describe the sharing economy is to say that every single sharing economy company can pretty much be boiled down to two things. One is trust, and the other is efficiency. So trust, obviously, you can do by reputations, by rating systems, background checks, things like that the technology that we have allows them to do very quickly. And then efficiency, of course, technology is making things so incredibly efficient. I mean, Uber is a great example, right? You pull out your phone, it knows via GPS that where you are, sends you a car that's very, very close. You can see the car moving as it gets closer to you. You just cut out an entire person who would have had to have dispatched that call to the taxi driver. So efficiency is huge. The same thing with lending company, right? You're getting on there, say you wanted an SBA loan for a coffee shop you wanted to open up. You're gonna spend maybe 6 months going back and forth with the SBA, and they're gonna ask you a bazillion questions and ask you to like promise them your firstborn child and all these other things. Or you can go on Lending Club and get a loan relatively quick. So you're seeing, I mean, the market's just driving these people to do the more efficient method. And it's obvious that it's working because to get that kind of valuation after 7 years is just insane. So of course, Lending Club, I have 3 case studies here that we're just gonna kind of go into. Lending Club is connecting people who need money with people who have excess money. And the way that they frame it for people who have excess money is they kind of frame it where it's higher risk than what a bank would be willing to do, but it's sort of an investment, right? So this is a great, okay, so little known fact too, the San Bernardino shooters, this recent shooting, they had actually taken out a $25,000 loan on a similar website that was not actually a Lending Club, but a different peer-to-peer lending, actually. So it's just so there are bad players that use things for, but that's kind of one of the risks of the sharing economy, right? There will be a couple of those. So second is Airbnb, and there's a great quote from Brian Chesky, who's the CEO, and he says, "Efficiency will save us from the robots and the recession." I like that quote. So Airbnb obviously is valuated at $25 billion, and what I think is interesting about them is they're actually running out of inventory at this point, right? So the amount of inventory that they have is rivals any large hotel conglomerate, and they are actually having a hard time now because they have more demand than they have inventory. So that's a good problem to have. Let's see. So Uber.
7 o'clock.
Ooh, okay. So Uber's an interesting one, and mind you, these guys are all riddled with lawsuits. So Airbnb is fighting lawsuits in multiple cities around the world right now. They just fought a big one in San Francisco. New York kicked their butt in 2014. Like these are all, I mean, they're making a killing, and they also have to be real, like they've also got a great legal team, right? That's fighting battles on the side. So I don't want you to think that this is just like everything is like hunky-dory, because it's really not. Like they're really, yeah, I mean, we're in a really big flux where regulation really hasn't caught up to any of the sharing economy models. So something really does have to be done, because it could get even uglier. So Uber's fascinating to me because the CEO constantly has like these gaffes, like where he'll just like say the wrong thing or just be a total jerk, right? And they have a competitor called Lyft, if you guys have heard of Lyft. And Lyft is kind of marketed as like the quainter, like nicer brand, right? But I think this is interesting because Lyft has actually struggled because Uber is so efficient, and they just took the market by storm so quickly. And so Lyft is trying to be like, the good guy kind of to the Uber's kind of dark horse, but they're actually not winning being the good guy because nobody cares. Like everybody's like, Uber's so fast, right? Like nobody cares about that. So what they've actually had to do recently is actually compete on price. So now Lyft is actually a lower price. The rides are lower price than Uber. And I think that is very telling, because when we think about the sharing economy, people either describe it as sort of like an altruistic networking, like we're all sharing things. You have a drill that's only gonna see 12 minutes of life in its lifetime, right? So why don't I not buy a drill and just borrow my drill from you, and we'll all be happy, So this very like rah sort of feeling that you get, but the bottom line is that it has really become, the ones that have won have been really competing on efficiency and price. So don't let it fool you. It's really just a really rad business model right now, basically. So let's skip. So we're going to go into, so I kind of flew through that. But if I went too fast, or you feel like you want to like unpack any of it, we can unpack some of what the model looks like and how it works. And then I want to talk about who wins. So maybe we can do basically break up into each table that you're with, and you guys can talk amongst yourselves. And then maybe somebody at the table can be the recorder, or the secretary, and take notes. But I'd like to see from you guys, without knowing, I mean, I can tell you the different arguments that are out there. There's arguments for and against the sharing economy. But I think it would be really fun for you guys to think it through and to see where you think the wins are and where you think, like, who are the winners and losers. And then the next question after we get back is how can we create regulations or things that make it so that everybody is in fact winning. Okay, so break up, so each table, and then the guys and ladies in the back together. So there's one question literally is who wins in the sharing economy? It's very vague on purpose, it's okay. You guys have 5 minutes. Oh, super.
Well, because now it's no longer like you can come stay in my house when you're busy.
What?
Oh no, I said this is fairly easy.
Yeah.
You have a list, right? So it's,
I just need a glass of wine. I know, I just had to say like something, I was like, poor people hoarding goods. I just had to say I could just stay out here. Am I in the right middle? Yeah, am I in the middle of the forward of you? Oh, good, okay. Yay, right? That would be an excuse, right? Yeah. Here, talk amongst yourselves for 5 minutes.
To simplify it, there's no point in having that middleman help the product up, take a little bit of yourself.
No way, okay. Where do I find them? Oh, rad, okay. Awesome, and then there'll be questions, or are they questions, or are they what? Oh, responses? Yay! Okay. Okay, you guys. ready to hear your answers. Yeah. Am I what? Oh, yeah, he's gonna nail us right now. You're gonna make him stop talking, right? I know, right?
So we actually have a couple of responses from the online community. Dominic Ling responded back that the winners were consumers, owners, the platform, and investors. And he said that the losers were disrupted competitors and the government. Lynn Saunders thought that the losers were government, i.e. Airbnb not paying transit occupancy tax, competition, i.e. those that are paying TOT, not a level playing field, and she thought the winners would be government, which eventually means community through less government revenue. Oh no, I think that must be losers still. Less government revenue for services, so I think that's losers. And then Jamie Orr down at the Tahoe Mill said, I still worry about economic inequity. Sharing can actually drive up prices, so it should be watched.
Can you ask him a question? How does it drive the
Sorry, Tahoe Mountain Lab, not Tahoe Mill.
Yeah.
By the way, can you ask him how does it drive up prices?
I said the opposite. It drove up the rental prices in Truckee.
Yeah, can you reply to her? Like, how does it drive up prices?
It drove up prices like crazy. Airbnb drove up regular rental prices because there's less available. So rental prices have gone sky high for like one bedrooms and single apartments.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true for long term.
we get twice as much doing a studio apartment VRBO as we make, with only like 50% occupancy. We make twice as much as if we were renting full time. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like it's paying a mortgage, but it's a tough choice.
Yeah.
It definitely hurts the people who are trying to
The
rent
long-term
a cheap
rentals.
place.
Okay, so you want to start back there? So we'll go through. This is gonna take us about 10 minutes. What's our end time? What are
Okay,
we
so let's check the time. We're still good.
Okay. So tell us who's winning, and then have you guys been talking about who's losing or just who's winning? Both. You're talking about both. So tell us in 30 seconds.
I want to speak to the comment that gentleman just made, and which the challenge of the Airbnb. And first off, I love unregulated markets. I'm not a big fan of big government, but there needs to be a balance somewhere. And the challenge that resort communities have, not just in Truckee, but throughout the world, is people that are well-to-do come here and they want to spend a lot of money. And we have a lot of people that need to make those markets work, and generally speaking, they don't make a lot of money. And with the challenge with this Airbnb and this open, sharing network is, just like this gentleman was saying, like, I could rent this room out for the winter, maybe this Lyft operator can spend $400 a month and rent the room out. Whereas I could rent it out for $150 or $200 a night per weekend to other people coming up and just renting it out. So all of these other people are getting pushed out of these communities, and then they have to get further and further away. Like, so the people that work in like the coffee shops down here in Truckee are then trying to live in Reno and having to commute out. And they do that for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they go, pardon my French, fuck that, I'm gonna get a job in Reno.
Yeah.
Right? So and it just doesn't work. So what ends up
Can you
happening
call them the
is
losers though? Can you tell me really quick? Tell me who is losing then in that? Can you?
everybody. Everybody's losing. Because then the whole system starts to fail. Because
Okay.
you want to ski, you want to come up here, you want to have a bartender, you want to have a barista, you want someone to park your car, you want all of these things, but there's this huge disparity between like the people that can come up and pay for it, and then the people that can get paid $12 an hour to do it, and then
Gotcha.
they're pushed out of the whole thing.
Gotcha.
So the question becomes like, how do we regulate that?
Gotcha.
We do that at the local town level, you know, and it's Airbnb and Uber and this and that, and yeah, I understand you have a point, that's fine, we'll get to that. I'm not trying to take over your meeting.
Yeah, you gotta wrap it up.
Right now, how are these people that are making all of this money, which is great, gonna recontribute to our communities so that it all works?
Right, okay, that's good, that's a great, yeah, we should write that down, that's good. Okay, yes.
I would say, well, for me, for winners, it's like college students, definitely for the Airbnb kind of thing, but also with sustainability. I had a marketing class, and we read like 3 different books on this kind of thing. So like in Denmark, they have a toy library. So instead of kids buying tons of toys that they're going to throw away and put in a landfill, you go to the toy library, check out a toy for a while, and when you're done with it, you return it. So it's kind of like a community sharing thing.
So they're winning, so sustainability is what the sharing economy is bringing.
Yeah,
Is
so
that
that's
correct?
winning.
Okay, that's a winning thing. Okay, thank you. Okay, so sustainability, yes.
Hi.
Do you have something?
Yes, I do have something.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know, another thing is that there's a lot of people that are in the cities, and what I've enjoyed about what we have is that we have very low prices. We have had amazing people come to stay here that are not wealthy, that are so grateful to have a backyard where you could walk for miles, people that can bring their children or their dogs and get out of the rest of the world for a month. And so, and they don't have to pay high prices. So, you know, I've always objected to just catering to the rich. You know, that annoys me. I can understand that. But there is people that can come and, for lower prices, and really enjoy their time, you know, without.
So is that a win for the sharing economy or a lose?
That's a win for both people. It's a win for us.
Well, and then sharing
And
economy.
it's sharing
Okay.
economy, yeah, it's truly sharing. And giving them the nature that we have here.
Okay. Yeah, so they're getting an opportunity to come and visit without having to buy an
On the
expensive
other
property.
hand, I am very involved with the Hispanic community in worldwide, and I really have a hard time with them having to be, who's gonna clean your fucking house? And they have to live way far away from the wealthy people, because there is no place for them to live, so it makes it, they have to pay so much for their gas and this and that. So I have, you know, there's an equal problem there.
Right, so we're still talking about wealth disparity, right? Like
Yeah.
the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer.
Totally.
Okay, so are there any more wins? When you guys were talking, how many more wins were there for the sharing economy on the wins column? Okay, and can you give me a 1 or 2 word answer?
Yeah, it's providing competition and generally better service.
Okay, better service.
I would call it a free market. That was our win.
Got it, free market.
That's just simplified.
So improving the product because there's the competition.
So Uber car versus a sweaty, dirty taxi cab where they drive you around.
Yeah. Got it, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, for me, a very important personal aspect is safety. And a lot of people say, well, there needs to be more regulation and so on, and I agree with that. I think regulation is very important in the sharing economy. But Uber, for example, me as a single woman, if I take an Uber, it's tracked. And they know exactly where I was picked up and where I'm going. I don't know if you remember when in San Francisco, a young woman was killed after she was out partying by a taxi driver. I never ever took a taxi again. And I only started using Uber when, you know, it was a more available technology. So I think security is really, really important, and we don't emphasize that enough.
So winning the technology is, yes, it's tracking you.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's a win. Yes.
It just struck me, we were talking about Airbnb and you were sharing about relationship that you have with the host and that opens up more community.
Yeah.
And so that's got to be a huge win
Yeah.
versus staying in a motel.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge win.
Which can be good and bad. So I was sharing when we
we had a long-term Airbnb in Europe this summer, and you build this relationship with your host. And so then when we got home back to the US, I was checking my email, and the host was like, hey, so after you left, we had this like plumbing issue in the kitchen sink, so we would love it if you could pay €260. And I was like, I love you guys, like we built this relationship with you, so of course I'm gonna pay it, but you could have totally bamboozled us. So it's like, you feel this relationship, whereas if I stayed at a hotel, like I'd be like, hell no, like, you know, I'm not paying that, like I don't have a relationship with you, you know?
Wait, we could have charged the Oh my gosh. This changes everything.
No,
We've
your
had
Airbnb
so
is
many
open.
plumbing issues. Yes, exactly.
If you're looking for win and lose, I think it's win-win because it gives people the opportunity to make money and it gives us the opportunity to also save money. So to me, it's win-win.
Okay, win-win for you. Okay, There's another example that isn't here. It's actually in Spain, because we talked about how some of the people that are making the minimum wage or whatever are kind of the losers in here. But Spain did something where they helped their economy because they got to the point where they had no money to share. And what they did was trade services. Exact hour was an hour of someone babysitting was worth an hour of someone's IT time. So every hour of anyone's hour is exactly the same. So that's truly a sharing economy because it's a level playing field for everyone. So if we were to bring that here to help kind of the people that need that step up, I think that would help kind of the people that can't even afford the Airbnb. They can't even afford to travel because we are leaving those people out.
Yeah, the lower
right
income
now.
brackets that really can't even play in this market. Yeah, that's a good
Exactly.
point. So
So
there
it's
are
not
those
the
have been around for a
individuals,
while here. Actually, and a lot of them went away because they weren't, like I was mentioning earlier, like Uber, the reason Uber and Airbnb works is because the hosts are getting paid and they like that extra money, and the people staying there are getting, some of them are getting 5-star experiences for $110 a night, right? So they're winning.
You have to have a car or a house or money to pay
For sure. So, but what you're describing, that bank, that actually has existed for a long time here. I can't think of. Can you think of which one's called? So in Ithaca, New York, there was an Ithaca Hours. So they tried to create a platform for that, and so it's hard because our market it doesn't seem to really support. It really would be useful, and we actually really appreciated it, and we're trying to see if that was actually something that we could emulate. Do you remember some of the reasons why it didn't work, or?
It's been around like 30-something years. I think the biggest problem with that is that it assumes, I think it's probably a right presumption, but it presumes that everyone's hours work the same. But is a brain surgeon's hour worth the same as a babysitter? Like, one could argue no, one could argue yes, because they're all humans. And I think that that's where it starts to fall apart, is not everyone agrees on that, and so then people believe that their hours are worth different values, and then it starts to fall apart.
They don't trust the systems, they already
What
know.
happened in Spain is nobody had money, so they couldn't even base it on money. That's why,
Okay, yeah, we have to get to that point, it sounds like. Yeah.
So
That's a good point, though.
One thing I wanted to add to this, I mean, as we're talking about a sharing economy, a friend of mine sent a message and said, well, isn't the government actually a great example of the sharing economy? If you think about that, we already talked about libraries, right? We talked about a toy library. But, you know, I'm sure when libraries, I don't know the history, anybody feel free to jump in, but I mean, when libraries were rolled out, right, that competed with any booksellers, right? Think about it. It's the same kind of story. The difference, I think, is that, you know, something like Uber, when Uber hits Reno, Tahoe, right, that dramatically changes very quickly the landscape for any taxi drivers. At least I would assume so, right? So people feel it faster because it's so much better, so much more efficient. People, you know, glom onto it so quickly. And I think that's worth keeping in mind, is that we already have a bunch of institutional models that they themselves are like examples of the sharing economy. They're just so slow, right? We don't think of the government as an efficient system.
It's not peer-to-peer though either, yeah.
But a lot
It's
of
really institutional, right?
it is an institutional model, but it's still, you know, when you use the word sharing economy, that's kind of different. Somebody else was talking about, you know, the gig economy in our group. And I think it's interesting, you know, if we just look through it as the sharing economy, that kind of generates a certain kind of discussion, and then the gig economy. When you say the gig economy, it almost conjures up notions that, like, you're looking through an institutional lens, and then it's very easy to criticize Uber and say, well, they're not offering health care, you know, they're look at how they're abusing these poor people. On the flip side, though, if you don't look at it, you look at it through that peer-to-peer model, where as a driver, I can start and stop whenever I want. I have all this freedom. I'm independent. I can own potentially a bunch of cars and have other people that I loop in and rent them, lease them the cars. I think it's just kind of what lens you're looking through.
Yeah,
the
that's
fact
true.
is, this stuff is happening. So winners or losers, this is just what's happening. We should get good at it. And we should figure out if regulation is needed.
That's right. If
But
it's needed, yeah.
But these systems are often self-regulating. So the question is, insofar as they're self-regulating, what on the fringes needs to be regulated better?
Yes. And that's a very simple one is the ADA, right? American Disabilities Act for
Right.
Uber cars. Like, or, that's like a very specific.
Because Uber has no
solution.
incentive necessarily to take care of those folks, right?
No, yeah. And that might be just one where you'd have to kind of reinforce something like that with regulation. But yes.
I mean, 2 comments. One, my brother drove a yellow cab in San Francisco, 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And number one, it was the early gig economy. Most of the drivers were actors and other people, and they could get a job with the taxi company and work a certain number of hours. On the flip side, they abused the drivers like crazy. And there was a massive corruption with dispatchers. You had to kiss his ass, you had to do this and that. If you pissed him off, you wouldn't get any rides. And this whole notion that somehow the taxi industry is this, supplier of quality, high-income medical support is garbage, always has been. And then go to New York City, they don't even speak English. You're telling me, now in London, where they make the drivers actually ride, you ever see these guys riding around bicycles, little numbers? They actually had to know where everything was. It took a lot to become a driver in London. That isn't true in America, never has been. And by the way, the medallions in New York, one of the biggest corrupt schemes on the planet, right? So these people that are sitting and holding up the taxi industry and saying, Uber's destroying this virtue of America, get over it, all right? Number 2, let me just say, people have used the word disruptive. One of the problems in disruption is it disrupts things. And that means it breaks the models that exist. When you talk about the market, my brother was also president of the hotel restaurant workers in San Francisco, and his maids couldn't afford to live in San Francisco. And if you drive to San Francisco now and you get to Fairfield, right, which is like 40 miles away, it is solid traffic of commuters because no one can afford to live there. Theoretically, if the government gets out of rent control and a few other things, some people will come in and build more properties. They've got to come up with a solution. They need maids, you need lift operators, and somehow. The problem is it's not going to happen in the amount of time because it's disruptive. That's what it means. It changes too fast, but over time things will adapt. And I really don't fear for my government. Trust me, they will be passing laws, and they will tax you, and they will do all the rest, and they will catch up. But again, they're slow.
Yeah. Well, I think, and those are really good points. I think why I would love to hear you guys come up with some regulations is because you're not the government and you're not in the business of taxing people just to make your paycheck, right? You're actually well-meaning folks who really just want to find a good solution. Okay, with that, so you've heard a couple of the bad things that, right? Like people with disabilities maybe not getting Uber cars, what you mentioned about the low economic class not being able to even play in this game. Now I think it would be awesome if you guys went back and actually considered some of the regulations that you would create, not as the government, but as a human citizen who has their vote, right? And let's see what we can come up with. There might be some great regulations that you guys come up with that nobody's ever thought of. And you guys all have a lot more knowledge than most of the government workers on the subject. So, okay, so we'll do this in the next 5 minutes, but it'll probably take us more like 10, so go ahead.
So I wonder what's going to happen. They just started to and that's what it's doing.
Thank you.
people are vested in this topic and really can't stop talking about it. So imagine that situation that there's the question out and everybody is sitting quiet around the table because nobody has any clue what you say. But this didn't happen tonight. Okay,
So really quickly, we're going to get 3 answers for suggestions for possible regulation.
Well, the one we came up with is
Anybody want to throw this overhead? Yeah.
So we got onto the topic of the money and how much money there's executives and there's workers. And so, you know, maybe looking at a model where, and Dr. Bronner-Soap does this, where the lowest paid person, the executives can make no more than 5 times of their lowest paid employee. And then so that what you want to do is kind of keep it even, so all that extra money that's being made is being somehow circulated back into the community and not inflating.
Not being hoarded by, so it's shared.
It's true.
It's shared, yes. Thank you. That is one of the main challenges that we have is how do we keep it shared? How do we make sure that people are, it's not just low-wage workers getting a bunch of different jobs and working, 5 hours here on TaskRabbit, 5 hours here in Uber, just trying to jumble this life together that just isn't going to work, right? Yeah, exactly.
So online, Jamie Orr said that for regulations, I'll summarize here. She doesn't have any specific recommendations, but she does think the primary focus has to be on safety.
Safety, okay, good. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Background checks. Okay, you want to go first, and then you.
Oh yeah, I think our consensus over here was no. We couldn't think of one reason to have any kind of regulations because even safety, if it's not safe, no one's using it, and you're going out of business. So it's like it's free market, it's social Darwinism.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a certain minimum of safety that's needed. If we look at the safety that you might see in India, would that be acceptable here? With a car, no seatbelt, in the summertime without the snow? Probably not. We wouldn't think that was so cool. We like seatbelts in our rides, I bet. Or you go, nah, if I can save 50 cents, I'll go without the seatbelt. And who takes the insurance for when the passenger gets into an accident? Maybe the car breaks down because it's not maintained very well on the railroad track and the train crushes the car. The passenger dies. Who pays for that? That sort of stuff isn't a market economy sort of thing. Because the driver's going to say, I'm going to save $1. It'll never happen to me. The driver's going to say, I'm going to save 25 cents. And I'm not going to get the car with a gold sticker. I'm not going to get the car with a blue sticker. So who gets sued there? Someone gets sued. We love suing everybody, right? That sort of stuff, that safety stuff. Airbnb, where's the fire exit? Carbon monoxide alarm? Does it have windows? Is it just a crawl space that was advertised just this last weekend in San Francisco for $500 a month? What is it? How safe is it? Does it have heat? Does the propane leak into the dwelling unit? That sort of stuff. I mean, there's a minimum standard that everyone personally has. You go to New York, you want to ride in a regular cab that someone kicked in an hour ago? Or do you go, gosh, I'm going to spend a little extra, $25, $30 and get a limo because it's New York and it's kind of stinky. So everyone has a different level that you're willing to pay for, and you might decide, well, the safety in Mexico, India, China is not the kind of safety I'm used to, so I want to pay more to get that level of safety that I'm used to. So some of it is what the society wants to have.
Are you suggesting, so I see what you're saying. Those are all really good points. Who are you suggesting should be held responsible? How do you get that safety level up to an acceptable standard? Are you thinking regulation by government? Are you thinking internally?
By government, that's the only thing that works.
Yeah. Okay, so you think regulation from government?
Seatbelts. That only happened after Nader insisted that everyone get seatbelts, right? Everyone resisted. People riding in cars still to this day resist putting seatbelts on as they go flying through the windshield. I see it on all those car chases in LA.
Let's say you do it in a place that's really crappy. You have people that say, go online and say, this is really crappy. So they're shooting themselves in the foot.
What about the first
Yes.
setting?
Yeah, the question is, you just don't want to be the first person. You don't want to be the first guinea pig. Yeah.
Yeah, so So you have references.
Yeah.
It's just like couch surfing. If someone calls and says, I would like to stay at your house, I'm a couch surfer, and I had maybe just 3 people come, and they've been fabulous, but there's several of them that they haven't paid their money, they haven't been referenced, and they have no references, and it's like, nothing.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So you're saying regulation, government needs to take care of
There's
it.
some low level of government regulation, but
Okay.
there's some higher level of comfort of your car. Do you have AC? Do you have, do you check the brakes once a year? Government might require that, but you offer to have your brakes checked twice a year to show that you have better safety standards than something else. You have airbags. The other
Gotcha.
cars don't. There's some level.
Yeah, some level there.
That is
Okay.
a government
Just real quick, one interesting thing about that is, isn't that about regulating cars and transportation? That's not really about the sharing economy. And I think what the sharing economy has done is made kind of poignant some of these disparities and differences, taxis versus limos, right? We tend to legislate based on these like point solution categories. And what we really need to figure out is like, some common operating rules. So that no matter whether I use a sharing service or just a regular taxi type service, I know that baseline I'm fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
True and untrue on that point. Like when you buy a car off the lot, everything works. But it can fall apart if you don't maintain it. So there has to be a certain amount of regulation, the regular checkups to make sure that the brakes work. To make sure
But isn't that true whether I'm getting in someone else's
Yeah,
car or my own?
exactly.
I should actually be required to make sure my brakes work whether I'm
know that
driving
when
or
you
not.
get in somebody else's car that has 68,000 miles, or 167,000 miles on it, if those brakes are good and those tires are good and all that stuff. So there's a certain amount of regulation involved. That being said, the regulation should be brought back into the individual communities. So instead of trying to have this big blanket, like federal, huge thing, and as far as, whether it's ride sharing or sharing your homes and how much things are worth, it has to be brought down to like the local economy. And then the people in the local economy have to participate and involve themselves and to say, what can we do and what can't we do and agree upon.
So you're saying legislated at the local level?
Absolutely.
Actually, along those lines, Jamie brought up the point of makerspaces developing community standards for users requiring a certain amount of training before they're allowed to use tools, which is kind of an interesting one. We hadn't talked about makerspaces yet. And Lynn brought up for Airbnb regulation, she thought that you must pay local TOT taxes to be able to rent your home to have a more level playing field with standard businesses. Plus, this helps to pay for services that your rental house requires, such as snow removal. So supporting the local government who supports your
Got it.
sharing.
Okay, good point. Well, thanks, you guys. I think we're getting close to the time. I didn't show you guys the 2 slides about what my company does within the sharing economy, but I think you can probably put 2 and 2 together. We actually provide we're an online marketplace that connects homeowners who want to host musicians in their living rooms or backyards with musicians themselves, and we're called parlorshows.com. And we're actually right now working on some functionality issues. So right now you can go on there and sign up as a host for free, of course, or as a musician. But booking shows actually requires an email to me at this point in time. But very soon it should all be automated, and you should be able to be booking shows as you please. And if you have any questions, you feel free to email me at ashley@parlorshows.com. Or if you have any suggestions or you just want to brainstorm and send it off into the ether and have somebody receive it on the other end, you can do that too.
I just have a question. When someone books a parlor show, is there like a fee that people pay to go to your backyard?
Oh yeah, so the way it works is that the host is actually there is no guarantee from the host. So the host doesn't have to pay $500 to have a musician in their house. The way it works is if you wanted to be a host, you would connect with a musician and you would collectively come up with a ticket price and the number of tickets that you can sell based on the occupancy of your house. And then you would actually be responsible as the host to find as many people, coworkers, friends, to buy those tickets to come to the show. So you're not out any money ahead of time, but you are, most of the responsibility is put on the host to get the people there, to fill the room.
So if one person comes, then the band gets paid $5?
Yes, the tickets are between $12 and $20. But yeah, if only, exactly, if only one person's,
So the
yes.
band has made the commitment to somebody who they don't know that they're gonna sponsor an event that might not happen and they have to show up
Exactly.
anyways.
Yes, that's kind of the risk of the market right now, to be completely honest. Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's the risk of being an entrepreneur, man.
That's why we're all here, right?
You want to get your own shingle on your own. You know what? Sometimes you lose your ass.
Well, so that would only happen once. That would only happen once, right? So if you're the first person, the hosts and the musicians get rated. So it's like,
you can no
yeah.
longer be a host, you're like out of the community, sorry, you screwed up once.
No, you're just gonna get rated. So other people can take risks on you. You get rated,
I got
yeah.
0 stars because that one flop. However, it was over like Christmas or something.
That's a good question, yeah. And we will know as we get bigger. I will let you know that is an issue that is going to come up, and I will let you know how we figure it out. Okay? Yeah, we can talk. Yes.
Can hosts guarantee a minimum?
Yes, they can. Yeah. So we've thought about this. So far it's worked, but we might end up having to require a minimum. But honestly, the minimums that they're even going to give are not even worth. I mean, these people are traveling. It's like so they give them a $50 minimum. That's going to get them maybe gas to the next stop. It's not even really worth it.
Can you
Yeah.
see how they play if they're even good?
Yeah, so they each have profiles with all of their links. So their YouTube links, everything. So you have a very large amount of content to listen to from them. Yeah.
How do you deal with if your next door neighbor that you share a fence with doesn't like that kind of music and doesn't love
That's a great question. So, well, 10 p.m. is usually the ordinances. So I don't think there's much they can do before or unless you're going past 10 p.m. But always, he's right. So that's one of the big suggestions is you make friends with your neighbors and you get buy-in before you even have a house show. Because that could be potentially an issue, yeah. Yes, and some homeowners associations actually don't allow it at all, so yeah. But that's the same with Airbnb, right? Tons of homeowner associations won't allow you to do Airbnb. Yes.
Do you have like a whole menu kind of examples of how to do this? Like tell your neighbors, make sure you know your ordinance, make sure you
Yeah, so we're working on that. That's all like education, yeah, education to help them succeed, exactly. So we will have all of that built in, yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This was one of the, appropriate to the topic, one of the most interactive events that we ever had. And what Ashley got at the end was a little bit of free business consulting from 30 consultants, and there could be more of that going on. Thank you so much. I think